Stage 1. The trigger. The cycle does not start with porn, it starts with a trigger. A trigger is not always sexual. In fact, it usually isn't. Triggers are moments where the nervous system becomes unsettled. This can be boredom, loneliness, fatigue, stress, frustration, feeling rejected, feeling overwhelmed, or feeling understimulated. Sometimes it's something external, like scrolling, a message, or an image. Sometimes it's internal, like a feeling you don't want to sit with. At this stage, nothing sexual has happened yet. There is no urge, there is no craving. There is only a subtle shift in state. This is the earliest point of the cycle, and it is the most important one. Most men miss this stage completely. They don't notice the trigger, they only notice the craving later. But by the time craving appears, the nervous system has already started searching for relief. At the trigger stage, awareness is still strong, choice still exists. This is where the cycle is easiest to interrupt, not with force, with recognition. The moment you notice, I feel unsettled, I feel restless, I feel flat, I feel disconnected, that is the trigger. Nothing needs to be fixed yet. Nothing needs to be resisted. This is simply the moment to respond early. This is the stage where reaching out works best. Before the mind starts building stories, before craving takes over, most men wait. They assume they can handle it later. Later is harder. Early is easier. This stage often feels insignificant. That's why it's ignored. But this is where the cycle actually begins. Next comes craving. Stage 2, craving appears. After the trigger, craving appears. Craving is not desire. It is the nervous system asking for relief. At this stage, the mind often says, I suddenly feel horny. I wasn't thinking about anything, it just hit me. But it didn't come from nowhere. Craving is the body's response to the earlier unsettled state. It is a signal, not a command. This is where many men make a critical mistake. They assume craving means something needs to be satisfied. In reality, craving means something needs to be regulated. At this stage, the urge is usually still manageable. It might be around 10 or 20%. This is the moment where early action works best. If you reach out now, before fantasy loops, before browsing begins, before curiosity takes over, your chances of breaking the cycle are very high. This is exactly why the WhatsApp group link below exists. Not for explanations, not for long conversations, just to interrupt the loop early. Reaching out at low intensity, around 20% urge level, gives you roughly an 80% chance of getting through it. Not because someone will save you, but because speaking breaks the momentum. Craving grows when it stays internal. It weakens when it's externalized. At this stage, fantasy often starts quietly, a single image, a memory, a what if. If that imagery is allowed to loop, the cycle accelerates. Craving itself is not the problem. Letting craving become a story is. This stage is still not about willpower, it's about timing. If you act here, you don't need to fight later. Most men wait until the urge feels unbearable. That's already too late. Early response feels unnecessary, late response feels impossible. This stage passes quickly, either into regulation or into the next phase of the cycle. Next, the ritual begins. After craving appears, the ritual begins. The ritual is not the act itself, it is everything that happens before it. This is the stage where behavior starts to repeat in familiar ways. Opening the phone, going to the bathroom or bedroom, lying down in a certain position, scrolling without a clear intention. None of this feels dramatic, it often feels automatic. At this point, many men say, it just happened. I wasn't really thinking. But the ritual is a sequence of small choices. Each one feels insignificant on its own. Together, they move the cycle forward. The ritual feels comforting, familiar, predictable. That's why it's dangerous. By the time the ritual has begun, awareness is already fading. The nervous system recognizes this pattern. It expects relief soon. This is why willpower suddenly feels weak. It's not that discipline disappeared, it's that the system has already committed. The mind often becomes narrow here, focused, tunnel-like. At this stage, people often stop reaching out, not because they don't want help, but because the loop feels private. Silence increases momentum. This is also where fantasy usually becomes more vivid. Images connect, stories form, curiosity grows. Once the ritual is fully underway, breaking it requires much more effort. This is why earlier stages matter so much. The ritual stage is not where you failed. It's where the system followed a familiar script. Understanding this removes shame and replaces it with clarity. Once the ritual begins, the next stage tends to follow quickly: acting out. This is the stage most people focus on, but it is not where the real problem began. By the time acting out happens, the cycle has already been running for some time. At this point, awareness is very low. The nervous system is flooded. The body is moving toward relief. This is why people often say, I was watching myself do it. I knew I shouldn't, but I couldn't stop. This is not a lack of morals. It is not a lack of intelligence. It is delayed awareness. Willpower is weakest here, not because you're weak, but because the system is already committed. This is why shaming yourself at this stage is misplaced. The decision was not made here, it was made earlier. Acting out is simply the final expression of a sequence that began much sooner. This stage is often followed by a brief narrowing of attention. Time feels different. Everything outside the act fades away. This is why the behavior can feel compulsive. Understanding this matters, because if you keep trying to fix the cycle here, you will keep feeling powerless. The goal is not to try harder at this stage. The goal is to recognize that this is already late. Acting out is not proof that you failed. It is proof that the earlier stages were missed. This is where the cycle turns toward relief. Stage 5, relief. After acting out, relief appears. In the diagram, this stage is shown in bright neon pink. That color is important. Neon pink signals intensity, a sudden spike, a sharp contrast to what came before. The relief is real. This matters. The nervous system experiences a rapid drop in tension paired with a short-lived surge of stimulation. For a moment, everything feels resolved. Breathing slows, the mind narrows, the discomfort disappears. This is the part the brain remembers, not the guilt, not the consequences, the relief. This is how the cycle is reinforced. The nervous system learns very quickly. When pressure builds, this brings release. That learning does not require intention. It happens automatically. Neon pink fits the stage because the relief is not calm and stable. It is intense and short-lived. It feels like peace, but it is actually a spike followed by a drop. This is why the behavior repeats, not because it is enjoyable long-term, but because it reliably shuts off discomfort in the moment. This stage often creates confusion later. People ask, if it makes me feel worse, why do I keep doing it? Because the nervous system remembers the pink moment, the relief, not the aftermath. Understanding this changes how you approach recovery. You are not chasing pleasure, you are chasing relief from pressure. Until safer ways of regulating pressure are learned, the system will keep returning to what worked before. This stage fades quickly, and when it does, the next color appears: shame. After relief fades, guilt and shame appear. In the diagram, this stage is shown in black. Black represents collapse, withdrawal, the absence of clarity. This is the stage where the mind turns against itself. Thoughts often sound like, I've ruined everything, I'm weak, I'll never change. What's wrong with me? This stage feels heavy. Energy drops, posture collapses, the mind becomes inward and dark. This is not reflection. This is self-attack. Guilt and shame feel like responsibility, but they are not the same thing. Responsibility looks forward, shame looks backward and loops. Shame convinces you that something is wrong with who you are, not just with what happened. This is why the black stage is dangerous, not because it hurts, but because it quietly sets up the next relapse. Shame creates isolation. Isolation increases nervous system stress. Stress looks for relief. The cycle prepares to restart. Many men believe this stage is useful. They think feeling bad will prevent the behavior next time. It doesn't. Shame does not teach the nervous system anything new. It only deepens the existing loop. This is also where people make harsh vows, extreme promises, all or nothing rules. Those promises feel sincere, but they are made from a collapsed state. They rarely hold. Understanding this stage matters deeply, because if you stay here too long, the cycle closes quietly. Time passes, the intensity fades, confidence slowly returns, and the trigger comes back. Black is not the end, but staying in black keeps the loop alive. The way out of this stage is not punishment, it is regulation and clarity. What comes next is resolution. After guilt and shame ease, resolution appears. In the diagram, this stage is shown in green. This green is different from the neon relief earlier. It represents calm intention, stability returning. This is the stage where people say, "That's it, I'm done. I'll never do this again. I've learned my lesson." At this point, clarity feels real. The emotional storm has passed. Confidence slowly returns. This is why this stage can feel hopeful. Plans are made, rules are set, motivation feels strong. This green stage feels productive, but it is often misleading. Resolution made from relief and shame does not survive stress. It survives calm, not pressure. This is why many men are confused. They genuinely mean their promises here. They are not lying to themselves, but intention alone does not rewire a nervous system. Green resolution feels like progress, but without early intervention, it becomes part of the loop. Time passes, confidence fades, life brings stress again, and the cycle quietly returns to the beginning. Resolution is useful, but only when paired with earlier awareness. Green intention must be supported by early action, otherwise, it simply resets the cycle. The loop does not break here, it breaks before craving. Conclusion: how the cycle actually breaks. This cycle is not a moral problem, it is a timing problem. Nothing in this loop means you are weak, broken, or incapable. Each stage follows the one before it automatically once awareness drops. Most men try to intervene here, at acting out or at shame. That is too late. By then, the nervous system has already committed. The real work happens earlier, at the trigger, at the neon green moment of activation. That is where choice still exists. Relief is powerful because it teaches the system what works. Shame is powerful because it keeps the loop alive. Resolution feels hopeful, but intention alone does not rewire behavior. What actually changes the cycle is early awareness and early action. Not force, not fear, not perfection. Reaching out when the urge is still low interrupts the loop before it gains momentum. Regulating the body early prevents the need for relief later. This is why timing matters more than discipline. This is why calm matters more than effort. And this is why relapse, when understood correctly, becomes information instead of failure. You are not trying to eliminate desire. You are learning how to respond sooner. Each time awareness arrives earlier, the cycle weakens. Each time you respond at 20% instead of 80, your chances improve dramatically. This is not about never struggling again. It's about shortening the loop and eventually outgrowing it.